Hey, Aurora Scholars. Welcome back as we continue to explore the world of poetry and work towards becoming strong poets just like Jack. What are we learning today? Well, we're returning to our guided questions. What makes a poem, and what inspires poets to write poetry? If you'll remember, this is in our materials for Module 1 topic on Google Classroom. So we're just going to review the guiding questions. And then we're going to continue reading Love That Dog and determining the gist of what inspires Jack to write his poetry. So, first off, before we can determine what inspires Jack, we have to talk about what inspires poets. The materials that you will need is Love That Dog by Sharon Creech, your student materials handbook, the page What Inspires Poets to Write Poetry note catcher. That should be page 28 in your student materials handbook. Headphones if you have them, and a quiet workspace. Go ahead, press pause, and when you are ready to continue, press play. All right, great. I am so glad that you got a nice quiet place to listen, and we are ready to look at our Module 1 guiding questions. First, what makes a poem a poem? And then what inspires writers to write poetry? Well, if you'll remember, we talked about what makes a poem are the characteristics of poetry. There are 4. We have structure, how the poem is organized, rhyme and meter, imagery. These are the words and phrases an author uses to help the reader imagine. With our senses, our sense of sight, sound, taste, and smell. And also repetitions, repeated words and phrases. What inspires writers to write poetry? Well, first, let's talk about the meaning of the word inspires. Inspire means to create or make someone feel emotion. All right, so that is what inspire means, to create or make someone feel emotion. So we will be looking today to see what makes Jack feel emotion to write a poem. Go ahead to turn to page 28 in your student materials handbook. Get that page ready. And then I want you to look at pages 46 through 48 and focus on Jack's poem of Sky. Now, I am going to let you pause and read these pages on your own. If you need me to read them aloud, that's fine. That it will be in the video titled Read Aloud of page 46 through 48. Go ahead and pause the video and read the pages or watch the video now. All right, great. Now, we need to talk about what inspired Jack to write his poem. The first thing we're going to do on our note catcher is we are going to write the date that Jack actually wrote the poem on page 46 and 48. And that date is March 22nd. And the poet is Jack. Now, I also included in parentheses, Love That Dog, because that's where we actually found the information. Okay, so quickly, that is where we found our information in Love That Dog, March 22nd. And we know that Jack is writing this journal to Miss Stretchberry. Now, we are going to go back and we are going to look at the notices. What do we notice about the poem? In this poem, I know that Jack talked a lot about his yellow dog. So I noticed that he's talking about him wagging his tail, slobbering. He was talking about when he picked him up from the shelter and the yellow dog was saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I know Jack is talking a lot about his dog. And he's talking about how much fun he had with his dog, Sky. Remember, we know that Jack's dog's name is Sky. Now, the very last thing that Jack talks about is he says the words, "Hey there, Sky. Hey there, Sky." We have seen that poem before with those same words, except for it said, "Hey there, son." That poem was in Mr. Walter Dean Meyer's Love That Boy. So we are going to include that in our evidence. So I noticed that reading Love That Boy by Mr. Walter Dean Myers and his dog Sky is what inspired Jack to write the poem on March 22nd. Now, the characteristics or the evidence of where we found the information is what we are going to put here. So we are going to put our evidence here. So we went over that we know Jack's poem ends with, "Hey there, Sky," and that comes from Love That Boy. So I want to include that in my characteristics of poetry. So of what inspired Jack. So Jack's poem ends with, "Hey there, Sky," which is similar to a line from Love That Boy. "Hey there, son," and his poem about his dog. So Jack's poem about his dog also inspired him to write the poem on March 22nd. All right, go ahead and pause the video and make note of this and copy what you see on the pages. This is my I do portion. You will have a chance to work on this on your own throughout the rest of Unit 2. So go ahead, pause the video. When you are done copying this into your note catcher, go ahead and stop the video. All right, guys, you did a great job today, and we will see you in our next video.